Hello, my name is Patrick Langley and I will be your presenter today. Thank you for joining me as I share with you the design of my research proposal on vitamin D and UC from the University of New England and APN 615, Nutrition and Metabolism. The focal nutrient is vitamin D and its functions as it relates to the human body. Commonly present hypervitaminosis D in those with IBD and umbrella diseases such as UC and CD, also referred to as ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, respectively. It is noted that vitamin D deficiency is common in those with IBD, but also malabsorption of vitamin D is possible in the disease process of UC. Low vitamin D is common in some people. It has specific disease processes in rickets and the lack of bone density. For vitamin D is responsible for calcium homeostasis, as well as the vitamin D receptor within the gut that affects bodily inflammation, but more specifically, gut-mediated inflammation. Further research has been concluded for the varying differences between UC and vitamin D and how they relate to one another. Synthesize your way out of hypervitaminosis D in just 3 steps. If you wanted to know the fastest method to gain serum vitamin D, first, let's have some eggs for breakfast. Make sure to have all the cholesterol found in those eggs. Then, after that, how about a sunbathing party for at least 15 to 30 minutes? But this time, don't get the sunscreen. Just go visit with that large ball of sun in the sky and synthesize up to 20,000 IU vitamin D per sitting. Anyone interested? Food sources of vitamin D include fatty fishes such as herring, tuna, salmon, and others, cereal, fortified of course, milk, also fortified, and sometimes gel capsules of vitamin D. In review of the literature, in a study that looked at IBD and industrialization, it was found that between the 19th and 20th centuries, vitamin D was commonplace in persons working in manufacturing and sun exposure. So the disease of rickets became more of a problem due to this lack of sun exposure. In a study by Koskun and colleagues that looked at vitamin D receptors and the development of UC, found that the vitamin D receptor responded to vitamin D and therefore decreased the onset of inflammation that is common in UC. In a study by Hu and colleagues that looked at IBD patients and made sure that the vitamin D levels were drawn prior to participation in the study, saw that vitamin D and D3 levels of 52 ng/mL or less was considered deficient. 46% of all IBD patients within this study were found to be vitamin D deficient. A high and low dose interval of 800 IUs every day, or the high dose 100,000 IU once, or 50,000 IUs times 6 weeks, were utilized as interventions. Those receiving either of the high doses had a 150% increase in vitamin D serum levels versus the 34% of the low group. In a study by Nielsen and colleagues, diagnosis of IBD had an increased need for hospitalizations, surgery, had a poor quality of life and decreased bone mineral density. In another study that looked at vitamin D levels in those with Crohn's disease, determined that vitamin D levels greater than 30 were sufficient, 20 to 30 were insufficient, and less than 20 ng/mL were considered deficient. In the last study by Cantorna that looked at vitamin D and gut inflammation, found that vitamin D was effective in turning off gut-related inflammation that is commonplace in those with UC. In the statement of purpose, active UC is the focal point, and vitamin D as a regimen is also the focal point. And the question is active ulcerative colitis positively affected by a vitamin D regimen of 50,000 IU times 8 weeks in those with depleted serum 25 OHD levels? The null hypothesis is active UC will not be affected by the regimen. The research hypothesis is active UC will be affected by the regimen. The significance of this study will provide an alternate or an additional treatment intervention to the current standards of treatment for UC. The study will also provide answers to the questions of whether or not vitamin D is correlated with the activity of UC in deficiency. The decrease in UC activity will provide improved quality of life to participants who choose to follow the recommended protocol after the study. This protocol will also be a potentially cheaper alternative than some known pharmaceuticals utilized in the treatment of UC. Vitamin D as a supplement is also an essential vitamin and therefore is beneficial to the participant overall. In the methods and procedures, a G-power analysis is utilized to determine the population sample size. A power of 0.95, effect size of 0.05 revealed a total sample of 112 in order to gain results that held significance. The study markers to be examined include erythrocyte sedimentation rate, ESR, C-reactive protein, CRP, and the serum vitamin D levels before and after the study to measure the effects of the intervention on inflammation and vitamin D supplementation. The study will be a non-equivalent control group design. Participants will receive a review of the consent form prior to being given the opportunity to sign or not sign the consent form. Requirements to participate in the study will include diagnosis of active UC. Active UC is determined by increased levels of ESR and CRP, and prior treatment of UC is required by the Hospital of Duke University Medical Center in Durham, North Carolina, which is where the study will take place. Another characteristic is that participants will have a diagnosis of vitamin D deficiency at levels less than 20 ng/mL. After the intervention, an increase of 10 ng/mL from 20 ng/mL is considered significant regarding vitamin D levels. P-values less than 0.05 will assist in determining a significant change from the start of the study to the end of the study. Of course, p-values will be determined using the ANOVA repeated measures from the G-power analysis, which looks at the analysis of variance of the two groups and how each treatment affected the activity of UC. The correlation coefficient, Pearson R, will also be utilized to determine if there is a correlation with the onset of UC in vitamin D deficiency. Inflammatory markers such as ESR and CRP will assist in determining the efficacies of the vitamin D regimens that are provided to the participants. These changes will assist in providing evidence for answering the research question and whether it provides sufficient evidence to accept or reject the null hypothesis. In ethical considerations, principles of the Belmont Report will be maintained for ethical purposes of the study. Participants will be regarded with the principles of respect, beneficence, and justice kept in mind at all times for the benefit of the participant. Thank you so much for watching my IRB proposal. Have a happy and healthy day.